Peter wants it, throws the needle, goes back in, Peter looking for the steal, he does it one more time! Gets him into play, he's alive! Gorilla gets denied by miracle! Are you kidding me?
All these minions are hitting the Voidling still, the next is the
He's
the greatest time!
He's gonna get
They did it!
Oh my god, they did it!
Being underdog doesn't mean being a loser. That's all.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Worlds Tonight, almost tomorrow, tonight. I'm Rivington Bism III here with Martin Deficio Lunga and Aiden Zirene Moon. We've just closed the books on Group A here in San Francisco. It was a crazy day to say the least. Coming into week 2, it was all up in the air. We had CLG, Rocks Tigers, and Albus Nox Luna at 2-1, and G2 still trying to scrap for a win.
Yeah, sadly for G2, very quickly it was over. First game of the day, they had to win it if they wanted to try and advance, had to get like a 3-0 into a tiebreaker. They lost instantly.
Yeah, that was the game that opened the day, a do or die for G2 Esports, who need to take down the Rocks Tigers, who almost looked like it was possible.
Yeah, it was definitely a tall task, and G2 once again got off to a good start against the Tigers, whose early game was still looking really rough, but then it came down to those team fights in the mid game where Rocks were just going off of Gorilla's dives and having fantastic team fights, and they played to their strength, and G2 played right into their hands.
And we've also heard that they're trying to, in the offseason, figure out what all that was and come back even stronger. The action continued as we see CLG got their rematch against the LCL champions, Albus Nox Luna, and were able to do some damage.
Yeah, I think CLG just want to forget these games, honestly, because this right here is the main reason CLG didn't get out of groups.
Yeah. Yeah, and ANX, they would have had the 1-1 against CLG, and CLG losing that game made it 2-0 and very hard for them to get out of groups.
Then in our fourth game of the day, Albus Nox Luna gets back on the Rift against the LCK Summer Champions, Rocks Tigers. And guys, the rest is history. Give me a history lesson.
I mean, this is one of the craziest games I've watched, because normally when, the international wildcard team gets an advantage against one of the best teams in the world, they don't manage to close the game. They don't manage to win the late game as well. But in this game, despite it, being a 65-minute long game with like 4 Barons and 3 Elder Drakes, Albus actually managed to keep it cool enough to get this late game situation here, where it looks pretty bad, but then there's so many super minions coming.
Yeah, the thing I loved about this was Albus Nox Luna, they kept playing the macro game. They didn't fall into the hands of Rocks Tigers. They made a couple mistakes on both sides, but then eventually it came down to Smurf peeling for Miracle in multiple fights that kept them alive for long enough that the damage from Albus Nox in these team fights was very high.
I do want to talk about this game more later, though, because I think actually this game highlighted a lot of their problems for Albus Nox Luna going into like the later stages of this tournament.
So with the group stage over here for Group A, Korea's Rocks Tigers and the LCL's Albus Nox Luna punch their tickets to next week's quarterfinals in Chicago, while G2 and CLG are going to go ahead and take a vacation.
Definitely, I knew the meme was coming at some point. I think CLG coming into this will be disappointed, because after G2 looked so bad, it was like, okay, this is CLG's time now to shine. They're going to surprise us again, like they did at MSI, make it out of groups. NA is going to get a team in the quarterfinal already, and EU is just down and out. Sadly for CLG, they kind of just joined, G2 here in the last day, and now they can go home together.
Yeah, it was kind of anybody's group to take, and it was on them. And I remember during week 1 and also this day, we were using the word disrespect a whole lot. And coming into today, I don't think anybody disrespected the other. They were taking each other seriously, and the better team won.
Well, since Rocks did take down Albus in a single tiebreaker match to close out the day, they will be that first seed, as it looked actually pretty shaky coming in, but they do advance, and we'll be able to see what they can do in Chicago. Tomorrow, the action starts all over again at 4 p.m. Pacific time. That's 1 a.m. Central European Summer Time, as Group C takes to the stage. First up, it's going to be Edward Gaming versus INTZ Esports, followed by AHQ versus H2K, which we heard is going to have some big implications. From there, the teams will play out their second and final round robin of the group stage. We are going to take a closer look at our first quarterfinalists of Worlds in just a moment. So if you're watching in the client, check out youtube.com/LOL Esports for the full version of Worlds Tonight. All right, gentlemen, let's break this down. Let's look towards the quarterfinals. Best of ones are a thing. They say any given Sunday, any given day, as it was this week, But what happens when we go to best of fives? Is it something Albus Nox Luna can iron out in 5 games? Are they being read too much? And also Rocks.
Yeah, so I think we have a Rocks team, not only judging from history, but also just from how well they've been playing during the summer split, even the spring split before the final. We have a team that will go into a best of 5 and be one of the massive favorites, no matter how bad they looked in this group, honestly. They have another week to prepare. Korean teams traditionally are really, really good at adapting to these big best of 5s. They have a lot of different things prepared. They understand, if you play this comp in game 1, we have this in game 2, and so on. So I think Rocks will look really good in these BO5s, and I think this group stage was not what they wanted, but they got the first place.
Yeah, and I think there was a little bit of experimenting there with the Nocturne coming back in that they played in the LCK like once or twice. But I think that the meta is going to kind of settle down for them, that they're going to stick to a few picks and actually just go with more counter picks. Because we have been seeing like you ban Vladimir, so you first pick Syndra, and then you go ahead and you go through like mid-tier lists and stuff.
We saw a bit of the adaptation from Rocks in their game of the tiebreaker where they just said, all right, we're going to bring the powerhouse to the field. We're not going to wait for that. Or they will wait for the early game, but no, they'll be stronger in the late game.
Yeah, exactly. Their Elise first pick was really, really good for them. 2 games in a row now. I was so surprised Albus didn't actually ban it away. Wasted bans in the end. So the Elise pick was huge because it gave them more of an early game. Obviously, the game we see here, well, that is the one where they just destroyed them in the bottom lane because for some reason Graves level 2 ganked. That didn't work.
Yeah. And that would never work either. It's not even like a red buff start into that. It's a non-CC jungler going for a gank. He threw away his early pressure. He threw away a level advantage. He threw away his jungle. And that really put the game in Rocks Tigers' hands from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think a super important thing to highlight is that, yes, Rocks looked pretty weak in this group compared to what we expected, but they were able to make it out anyway. When G2 didn't look very strong in the group, they weren't able to make it up because their top level just wasn't high enough. So even a 70% Rocks Tigers could get first place in this group, meaning if with another week into a BO5 they can get closer to the 100%, we might soon see that powerhouse we expected to show up actually shine in playoffs.
Yeah, and that 30% that you're talking about that's missing and that 70% was that early game, and they were still winning when they had some of the worst deficits in the entire tournament. They were still coming out on top because their mid game is just so damn solid that if Rocks Tigers are able to actually have Peanut with an early aggressive jungler and have some success, 100% they transition to that mid game with a lot of things behind them that they could close the game out with.
We talked a little bit about adapting for Rocks. I think all teams adapted to Licrit in the bottom lane, who played his face off throughout this tournament, and he just kept getting 3 bans after that.
Yeah, League Jesus got a little bit camped in that last game. There were 5 kills in that bottom lane, was like 0-3 and 0-2. They were completely pushed out of the game, and they didn't get to have the same effect on it. And I believe I was talking with I forgot who it was before. I think it was Crumbs. It was like, it's really important to actually go after shot callers of teams and go after vocal people on the teams who are trying to make plays, because then that slows the team down. They don't know exactly what to do, but if they get ahead and like Licrit starts like going off on brand, like he 100% knows what to do in that game. He 100% knows who to go after and how to deal his damage. So getting them behind, making sure that they can't play their game is very important.
Well, let's take a look at Albus Nox stats right now, because as a team, these guys look like they are having so much fun when they play. They're always behind each other on a call that could look like they're jumping into a pit of fire.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things they talk about in interviews as well, like how they come in here, they don't care about what other teams are playing. They don't care about what is 100% the matter. You know, they have their own picks that they enjoy playing, that they played a lot, they have the synergy with them. And honestly, if each member feels very comfortable on their champion and just does his job, they feel like that's enough to win. That's why Licrit can play this insane style where at one moment he's making the biggest play and he's winning the game, and then the next moment he's making the dumbest play and actually losing the game. But that's because every player is literally being enforced to like play this style. If this is how you want to play the game, this is how you should play. Pick these champions you want. His team is not telling him, no brand, no brand. He's like, no, go brand, yeah, do your thing.
I don't know about that Braum game though. Maybe the brand was open.
All right, so tomorrow, Group C plays out their last 6 games here in San Francisco. EDG, INTZ Esports, AHQ, and H2K. Gentlemen, who is going to make it to Chicago? Give me that. I'm going to hold you to it.
I think the easiest one to start with is EDG. I think EDG still #1 team from the LPL. I think that they're going to make it out pretty handily. I think they'll get things under control with this week of practice. And second, actually coming out of that, I think it's AHQ. AHQ already have the game up over H2K. They may have to play a tiebreaker for it against H2K, but if they win in that matchup, they are like really in a good spot to make it out of that group above H2K in the European squad.
Yeah, it's a super tough situation for H2K because they lost that first game against AHQ, so now they have to win it. Then, as you said, win a second one. If everything goes as planned, where teams are beating INTZ and losing to EDG, obviously we've seen a lot of upsets. INTZ can definitely go in and win games against both AHQ and H2K, because H2K as a team, like, it almost feels like they just beat themselves. It's not other teams like destroying them completely. They make some really dumb mistakes one game, and then the next game they make some really good moves. They snowball the early game well. So I have a very hard time seeing H2K consistently win the games they're supposed to, and I can easily see them drop a game or two, and that can ruin everything for them.
Yeah, and you're talking about those games you're supposed to win just because you're a certain team, but the wildcard team, INTZ, they might be able to take a game and upset some teams there.
That's what I'm thinking. It seems like some of these teams are sleeping a little bit too much. We saw it happen again today. CLG didn't get what they wanted out of their first game, but then were able to come back, and as the games go for a roundabout tomorrow, that could definitely happen.
Yeah, and I think INTZ are actually, I think Albus Nox Luna is really good, but I think INTZ is actually a little bit better and performs a little bit better than they do, and they have a really strong sense of macro game. They have a really strong sense of how to play the meta, and I think that could carry INTZ to a few victories. Whether or not it's them making out of the groups, I don't know, but I believe they will take some upset wins, but those are wins that those teams that they upset have to find somewhere else, or else they're out of the group.
Sounds like a real tough job, but that's what Worlds is. We'll be back here tomorrow afternoon at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium as Group C plays out, and of course, tomorrow evening for more Worlds Tonight. Until then, GG and good night.
Pina wants it, throws the needle, goes back in, Pina looking for the steal, he does it one more time! Gets him with the flag, he's alive! Gorilla gets the eye by miracle! Are you kidding me?
All these minions are hitting the void link still. The next is
Go!
the greatest triumph.
He's gonna get
They did it.
Oh my god, they did it!
Being underdog doesn't mean being a loser. That's all.